Different year, same status, same level, same production on the recruiting trail, and delivering a top 5 elite class in college football. It's Ohio State Buckeyes live here each and every Wednesday. Typically, we're coming your way on a Thursday because these guys were kind of busy yesterday. You got Steve Hellwagon from the top, but Bucknuts, Kevin Noon, Buckeyes Scoop, and of course Tony Gerdeman also from Buckeyes Scoop. Hey guys, how you doing?
Doing good.
Doing well.
Doing well. I'm trying to track a little lighter than you guys, but about 40 or 50 teams. You guys have to go full throttle on one in particular. So, Steve, we'll start with you because there was one big get on that final day that Ryan Day made a comment. Hey, if we knew that this was in the bag the entire time, we might have saved ourselves some sleepless nights in getting one of the best players out of a neighboring state in Indiana, and also a miss in Terrence Brooks.
Yeah, the door kind of swung both ways for Ohio State on this. And obviously, Caden Curry, that was the good news. It came Tuesday afternoon about 3:30. He announced online that he was picking Ohio State over Alabama and Indiana. And he's a national top 100 player, right around the 80 spot on the 24/7 Sports Composite, so a 4-star player. And he's a guy, 6'3", 250, I think, in that range, maybe a little taller than that. His team won back-to-back state championships at Center Grove High School outside Indianapolis. And he's a guy, depending on where his body goes in the next several years, that he could be potentially a defensive end or a defensive tackle. Just depends which way his body goes. They have a pronounced need at both positions, obviously, with the way their depth is right now. So we'll see on Caden Curry where he ends up. Obviously, the bad news was Terrence Brooks. He's a national top 50 player thereabouts from, I think it was Little Elm, Texas, which I think is in the Fort Worth, Dallas area, I believe. Kevin's our expert on Texas, but having lived there. But he was a key cornerback prospect and one of 3 cornerbacks that Ohio State was hoping to sign in this class. They had a commitment from Jaheim Singletary previously, and he had decommitted and went elsewhere. So they ended up with 2 other corners in this class, but he was the guy I think that they were really hoping to land in this class. And so some good, some bad, a top 5 class right now. And Coach Day said that he still thinks there'll probably be another 3 or 4 signees that are in this thing in February. They may or may not have somebody come on board with an announcement at the All-Star game coming up in January. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see how that goes.
Yeah, they're sitting with 18 after the reclassification of Sonny Styles to the class of 2022, which is a huge get for them. Carson Hinsman, the offensive lineman out of Wisconsin, could be making an announcement on Friday. So we'll see there. That's Ohio State and Wisconsin. You can really look at it one of 2 ways. Either he's so torn that come Friday, he may just say, well, I'm going to stay home, even though where he's from in the state of Wisconsin is much closer to Minneapolis than it is to Madison, being from the western part of the state. Then guys like Hero Kanu, Amari Abor, they are going to announce at their respective All-Star games, one of them being January 2nd, one of them being January 8th. Then, of course, you still have somebody like Kristen Miller, who is the defensive tackle out of Cedar Grove High School, suburban Atlanta. Ohio State at one point looked pretty good, and then it looked like he was going to go to USC. Then it looked like he was going to go to UGA. Did UGA fill up at the position? What's going on there? He plays more games than the Parker brothers, so we really don't know what's going on with his recruitment. But I did a show with Bill Green and Mark Givler last night. Even these game players have to sign somewhere eventually. So why not Ohio State? But that one seems like a little bit of a longer shot than maybe some of these others. And then, of course, you go through and you see who didn't sign and kind of try to address some situations there. And then, of course, there's the transfer portal as well. Ohio State is in after the big transfer out of Florida International has made the final 3 with him, along with LSU and Florida State. So, I mean, maybe a 1-3 chance there. I mean, I've heard some mixed stories on what Ohio State's chances are, but still a lot of pieces in motion. But, I think if you talk to Ohio State fans right now, they're not satisfied with a number 5 class. This class was in line to potentially be Ohio State's greatest class ever. You end up losing Quinn Ewers, who reclassifies at 21, subsequently transfers out. You lose Jaheim Singletary, as Steve had mentioned. You lose Terrence Brooks. It's still going to be a very good class, but, I mean, there are some positions where you think that maybe Ohio State underperformed a bit.
Yeah, I think offensive line and cornerback would be those two for me. The two decommits at corner, even though Jaheim Singletary happened a while ago and Terrence Brooks happened yesterday, I think that leaves them – it doesn't leave them short yet. Ryan Day said they want 8 scholarship corners, and that's exactly what they have right now. But that's with Seven Banks and Cameron Brown. And we saw Cameron Brown on Twitter yesterday teasing Buckeye fans a little bit, saying, hey, do you want me back? I'm sure these Ohio State corners have been seeing the Buckeye fans clamoring for Eli Ricks, who ended up at Alabama and Ohio State passed on or whatever. So there's been some hurt feelings from Buckeye fans in terms of the Eli Ricks stuff. And so now maybe Cameron Brown gets to play a little bit of cat and mouse with the Buckeye fans, but they do need him back. They do need Cameron Brown back. I don't know that Seven Banks will be back. And I even if those guys do come back, I still think you might see Ohio State go to the portal. Mark Pantoni tweeted yesterday, he's like, this is college football in 2021. I'm spending my signing day looking at the transfer portal. And that's going to be offensive line, as we know, with the kid from FIU. That's going to be at corner. That might be at linebacker because they're thin there as well. It was interesting, though, that Ohio State has a top 5 class, and will they finish top 5? You would think, because they do have some defensive linemen that they like that they should be getting, and that will keep them. A lot of times Ohio State will fall a little bit as the SEC teams rise to the top late and they close strong. But to see the reaction yesterday from so many Buckeye fans on Twitter that the sky is falling and the end is nigh, and then you look at the rankings and you're like, I bet most schools wish that their end was nigh if it looked like Ohio State's.
Yeah, you can look at that overall ranking, depending on your service, 4 or 5. And also look at the average player ranking, which the last time I checked it out, it was close to 2. I believe it was 3 because of the quality of the class. They're at 17 correct letters of intent right now, and their competition in that top 5 is more in the mid-20s.
Yeah, they're waiting on Gabe Powers to sign on Friday. They're doing a big thing in Marysville for that. So technically, Gabe Powers is not signed, but have no fear, he will sign. I'm 1,000% sure on that one.
You didn't cover Travis Hunter's announcement yesterday, did you, Kevin?
I was very well aware of it. I did watch it online. I don't know if Deion Sanders has made a call to Gabe Powers. I don't know if there are any 7-figure NIL deals that are being thrown around in terms of moving elsewhere, even though that seems to be up to debate if that Barstool Sports thing really exists or not. I've read some conflicting reports on that, but I don't push my chips all in that often, but I'm going to push my chips all in that Gabe Powers will sign with Ohio State.
Talk about possibly reading some conflicting reports, or not necessarily conflicting from my vantage point on what I've seen on social media to clean up the Eli Ricks situation. It seems to be something that Ohio State decided for him not to come, so it wasn't necessarily a decision that he made in the end. Do we have something definitive on that?
I asked our people, and the only thing I got back was injuries and baggage. I mean, he played, I think, 6 games one year and 10 games the next, or vice versa for LSU. And there was some type of off the field. I don't even know what it would be because I haven't investigated it all, but the word baggage was used. So, Ryan Day is adamant when he goes into the transfer portal, it absolutely must be a culture fit for Ohio State. They're not going to bring in somebody who doesn't fit their culture and who isn't willing to work for the opportunity and upset the apple cart with one guy, have one guy come in and ruin your building. So that's not going to happen. So I don't want to say that that's what the case would have been with Elias Ricks, because I never met him, don't know anything about him. And as I said, didn't spend 1 second investigating what could be in his background that may have given them pause, if that's even true, to not go with him. So, take it with a grain of salt. But that's what I was told. I don't know what these guys heard from their sources as well.
Well, I can just say this is a guy who had shoulder surgery as a high school senior, had another shoulder surgery this year. So there are injury issues with him. But also, you've got an Ohio State defensive staff that Ryan Day isn't talking about who's coming back. Somebody's leaving, and Ryan Day isn't talking. And I don't know if he's talking to recruits about who's coming back, but there's question marks about who will be coaching the secondary next year. So you could understand if that gives pause to defensive backs. Now, I don't know the entire story on what played into that. I've heard the same thing as Steve with the baggage, but you don't know if that comes from Ohio State and that's just a way to soften the blow or what. But there's enough reason for Ohio State to have questions and enough reason for Eli Ricks to have questions, I think.
Yeah, it's very difficult to dance around the baggage issue because you have to consider the source. I certainly have heard baggage from other programs, so I can at least come out and say that it maybe not necessarily just something that's being put out for Ohio State for one reason or another. I did hear a story that when Derek Stingley Jr. really emerged at LSU, that Eli Ricks didn't take kindly to it. Eli Ricks had to be CB1 there, and it created some rifts and whatnot. So yeah, I will say that there are some baggage issues, but I did hear injury as well was a concern. I think Ohio State certainly wants to make sure after Palie Naote not necessarily being able to be all that he could be because he was stunted at the beginning of his Ohio State career because of the NC2A not being able to figure out what it was doing in terms of his eligibility. If you're going to go and bring somebody in, you can't predict a freak injury may be happening to somebody who doesn't deal with a lot of injuries. But if you're bringing in somebody who just has injury after injury, do you take the hit in kind of hammering your room and saying, well, we don't think any of you others are good enough, so we're bringing in somebody? Do you take that hit by bringing in a player that you might get 4 games out of? So, and of course, we now have the argument of, well, Nick Saban's figuring out a way to do this. Well, Nick Saban defies gravity in a lot of instances, so you just kind of have to accept that. And the sooner that you accept it, it's just easier to move forward. That whatever, things that seem to work at Alabama don't seem to work elsewhere, and you just kind of have to, you have to deal with it. It's like going into a science fiction movie. You have to suspend reality. If you go in and say that there's no way that Star Wars is real, well, no, it's not. But if you're going to get hung up on that, you're going to have a real bad time.
Mark, what we learned from this cycle is that Alabama, Texas, and Texas A&M all pay their players, and they all have deeply embedded name, image, and likeness programs that go back many years to compensate these guys. Terrence Brooks left Ohio State and went to Texas because of name, image, and likeness. And, could something be afoot? I don't know. Is Ohio State being caught flat-footed on this? I don't know. I don't know what the real truth is. Ryan Day was adamant standing up there, we're going to do this thing by the book. We're going to follow the rules. And, that's where it's at. Everyone's like, Gene Smith's got to get this machinery in place. Ryan Day was quoted as yesterday, the school cannot set up name, image, and likeness for these players, period. So it isn't a Gene Smith issue. It's not a Ryan Day issue. There's no formal set this up for the players. Behind the scenes, can people, do things and whatever, I suppose. But as it stands right now, the market is what the market is.
A couple quick points. The Eli Ricks thing, the Paula Teote thing, they bring him in and two guys transfer out mid-season. There's also that to consider. And I know that was one of the rumors about the disruptions, but Ohio State watched that happen this year. They also had two corners in Seven Banks and Cameron Brown where they didn't know week to week who was going to play, who would be able to play, who would be healthy. And do they want to bring in a third corner who has that same situation where you don't know if he's going to be able to play? And that can be a frustrating thing. The NIL stuff, I see it. And again, I know fans are upset that Ohio State isn't doing anything. And then when we report that Ryan Day is saying Ohio State is not going to do anything because they can't, they get upset like everybody else is doing something. No, I mean, I even listened to Steve Sarkisian this morning on Sirius XM saying like it's not wise for players to choose schools because you get paid $15,000 more at one place or $30,000 more at another place. That's not how you build culture. That's not how you bring in winners. And whether you want to wink at that or whatever, it's like he's right. I don't know if he's going to stop it from happening, but he's going to reap the benefits of it and then try to deal with it. But now you are seeing a local businessman here in Columbus who tweeted out yesterday that he's going to start a 501c3, and then it gets quote tweeted with like celebratory tweets and emojis from Ohio State assistant coaches because Ohio State can't do anything. It's against the rules for the schools to set this up. It's up to the alumni and the fans to pay the players above board now. And I posted this on our message board, but it's like it's up to you guys now. And if people feel it's worth it to them, they will. If people don't think it is worth it to them, they won't. But it's worth it to Texas alums because they've been losing for 15 years. It may not be worth it to Ohio State alums because they've been winning forever.
I also think that the name Eli Ricks has been out there for so long because he was playing with the transfer portal at this point last year or much prior to the season. And I'm guessing that most people that have commented about him on Twitter don't know a whole lot about him in regards to have not watched him play, don't know a whole lot about his injury history, that he's been on the field about half the time, if that. I'm not taking away from the man's talent. Of course he can play. Of course he's a talent. But I would tend to lean back on, obviously, the Ohio State football operation is not perfect. They do not make every decision correctly, but they're hauling in top 5 classes. They're definitely in the business of acquiring quality players. So if they, for whatever reason, decided that this wasn't a good fit, because as you guys all outlined, these decisions aren't made in a vacuum. It's not just acquiring, stacking as much talent as possible. You impact other individuals, and there are things to be taken into consideration, no doubt. All right. As Steve has let everybody know, please post questions. We're going to lose Steve at some point, so we're going to get him involved as much as possible. So, and people also need to understand that these rankings are not perfection either. The number 1 class may not turn out to be the number 1 class. The 5th ranked class in the country might turn out to be as good as the number 1 class 5 years down the road, or it may be decidedly worse. There might be a gap between 1 and 5. We don't know. But we know that the rankings mean a whole lot. I looked at the composite team talent rankings as posted by 247 Sports yesterday, and it was basically the top 6 are the college football playoff era. That's what it is. Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma, LSU, Clemson. Yeah. Didn't get the order right in the last couple, but the top 6, that's the playoff era. Those are all the teams involved. They're the top 6. So this means a whole lot, no doubt about it. You want to be as high in those rankings as possible, but top 5's typically getting the job done and going to put you in a position to develop that talent and get to a playoff consistently.
Yeah, I mean, it's those top classes. You look at the top kids in those classes, and that's the difference between those teams and a lot of other teams. They're the ones who are splitting up a lot of the 5 stars Jackson State not included in this situation here with Travis Hunter, but really, I think the thing that goes into showing the how great a class is maybe not players 1 through 5. I think it's players like 8 through 15 of the class, and if players 8 through 15 really kind of pan out, then you're on to something. I certainly can go through. Ohio State has had classes that were highly regarded, 3, 4 in the nation, and just didn't click for whatever reason. Or, and then we sit there and we have the James Laurinaitis of the world kind of going back, who's just the perfect example of the guy that was underranked coming out of high school for whatever reason, who goes on and has a tremendous collegiate career and then a tremendous NFL career. So it's those top schools are always, until something changes, and I don't see it changing even with name, image, likeness, you're still going to see the same schools at the top. But I think what the difference is between what we're talking about on National Signing Day and the couple weeks coming out of National Signing Day versus several years down the line is, what does the middle of that class end up performing at? What level do they perform at? And that's what ends up being kind of the legacy of the class, more so than, well, they were the number 3 class a week after the time we talked about them. If that middle does well, oh, well, everybody completely missed on that one. If the middle doesn't do well, oh, it was a bunch of overrated guys. These recruiting analysts, they don't know anything.
Talking Ohio State football each and every week with all of you, and we hope you appreciate the time given to us by Steve Hellwagon, Bucknuts, 247 Sports, Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Scoop, Kevin Noon there at Buckeye Scoop. Before we continue, want to know where you guys are at, and since this is such an important week where people are digging for information and want to know the player profiles and everything, Steve, we'll start with you in regards to what you got going this week, football and basketball.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm actually getting ready to head to the airport here shortly. I'm going out to Las Vegas to cover the CBS Sports Classic with Ohio State against Kentucky. The game will tip off about 5:15, 5:30 on Saturday. And looking forward to that trip. Then I'm coming back to Columbus for about a week or so, and then out to Los Angeles to cover the Rose Bowl. So it is busy times and a great time to be following what's going on with Ohio State. So yeah, it'll be a lot of fun.
Tony, for everybody that wants to do more digging beyond what we got here, Ohio State, tons of recruiting and bowl prep and everything else. What you got?
Yeah, you can find me at BuckeyeScoop.com. Also, my several times a week podcast with Tom Warren. On sometimes Kevin Noon joins us. The Buckeye Weekly podcast. You can find that on all of your platforms. We are dropping the show Friday, looking at the recruiting class, talking about the most likely to be an All-American, the most likely to be who's going to be the first All-Big Ten player, who's going to be this, who's going to be that, doing some projecting of the class. And then I think today I'll write up some thoughts about each of the signees so far and go from there.
Kevin.
I can also be found at BuckeyeScoop.com. You can find me on Twitter at Kevin_Noon. You can find my podcast, which generally runs twice a week as well. It's the Big Me Kickoff. I haven't really decided what I'm doing for my Friday edition. There's still plenty of things out there to be determined exactly what's going on there. And just minutes before coming on Mark's show, posted a story with Lorenzo Styles Sr. talking about Sonny Styles, the decision to reclassify, and maybe just some of the differences between the Ohio State that Sonny is walking into versus the Ohio State that Lorenzo Styles Sr. walked into back in the 90s.
Or maybe the Ohio State that Marcus Freeman walked into 10 or 12 years ago. Which brings me to, do you guys have an issue with what he said about Notre Dame and Ohio State? And if anybody's not familiar that's listening to us about Marcus Freeman's comments, or what actually, if I'm being more accurate about it, what he wrote, correct, in an article about Ohio State versus Notre Dame and not making the same mistake twice. Tony, I'm looking at you since you nodded your head a couple times. We'll start with you. Any issues with what Marcus Freeman had to say? Because I had issues with it. I posted a video. Everybody can see what I had to say about it. I don't think it's the end of the world, but I had some issues with it.
If Marcus Freeman made a mistake by going to Ohio State, that helped him get into the coaching ranks, that eventually helped him land the job at Notre Dame. And also if Luke Fickell, the former Buckeye, by not taking the Notre Dame job, allowed Marcus Freeman to get that job as well. There should be a lot of thanks and appreciation for what Ohio State did and has continued to do for him. And even Ohio State sniffing around as a defensive coordinator for him has made him money. So every step of the way throughout his career, I think Ohio State has benefited from his association with Ohio State, his degree, his playing days from Ohio State. And it's just it's funny, or is it disappointing to hear him categorize it as a mistake? Maybe things would have been better if he went to Notre Dame. I mean, look at all of the college football head coaches that program has produced.
Yeah, it's probably one of the few things he's really messed up here because, I get you want to portray Notre Dame as the ultimate destination for college football and for the top prospects and everything else. But Ohio State gave him everything that he has. And I just want to say it's a young guy making a mistake, he took it 1 mile too far. And there was no reason for him to say anything that even could be construed as negative about Ohio State. I mean, I think I haven't looked it up, but I do think maybe Notre Dame was a school he was looking at coming out of high school in the Dayton area. And yet he had such a spectacular career at Ohio State. They played in 2 national championship games. He was a 3-year starter at Ohio State. And he was an all Big Ten player and had a shot in the NFL. And then I think he injured his neck and his NFL career was cut short. And he made lifelong friends like James Laurinaitis, one of his best friends and best buddies, and got to play for Luke Fickell. Became acquainted with Darrell Hazel, who gave him his first shot as a college coach at Kent State. And then, Fickell, I think, hired him as an analyst, I think, at OSU or as a quality controller, whatever. And then Hazel, and then Fickell. I mean, maybe he went to Purdue with Hazel.
He did.
Cincinnati with Fickell. I mean, maybe he gets those ties if he goes to Notre Dame and somebody hooks him up over there. I don't know. But Luke Fickell and Ohio State have given this guy everything he's ever had. And so I don't want to beat up on him because I like Marcus and I'm rooting for him. I hope he does very well at Notre Dame. There's enough out there that Ohio State can prosper and Notre Dame can prosper. I mean, they play the first game next year. I think those comments will be dredged up quite a bit in the run up to that game. And I don't think he's going to like the result of that first game with CJ Stroud wearing the scarlet and gray. I don't think there's going to be many people, that are going to believe that Notre Dame's going to pull that one off unless he pulls some kind of a rabbit out of his hat. But he's got to play him the first 2 years he's the head coach at Notre Dame. So be careful. He took it a mile too far.
Yeah, I think it was ill-advised. I think it was a tactical mistake of what he said there. He could have still had a great message out there without putting Ohio State on blast in this situation. Yeah, he did. I mean, not only did he play coach under Hazel at Purdue, but he followed him to Kent State. He left Ohio State as a GA in 10 and went to Kent State in 11 and 12. And let's remember that if Marcus Freeman would have gone to Notre Dame instead, he would have been there for the final year of Ty Willingham and then been there for Charlie Weiss. I mean, I know that's so much opportunity there under good old Chuck.
I think they had a losing season. They had a losing season in there somewhere and didn't come close to playing for the national championship.
07, they were 3-9 in 07. Ty Willingham's last year, and then they ended up having an interim for the bowl game, was a 6-6 year. So, I agree with everything that Steve and Tony said. I think it was a bad decision. Probably, you're trying to throw red meat to your fan base, and there certainly is a rivalry between Ohio State and Notre Dame with a couple of blue bloods in the proximity to one another, even though they don't play each other all that much. A lot of Ohio State fans I know, Notre Dame is their second most hated school. Pretty much the few Notre Dame fans I know hate everybody. Probably Notre Dame as much as anybody when they're not performing well. But big time mistake by Freeman there. Does it bother me? No, I don't have any skin in the game there really. At the end of the day, I like Marcus. I texted him, congratulated him when he got the move to the full-time head coaching position. But if he would have run the copy by me, I would have said you should probably think twice about this.
It is interesting. If he had chosen to go to Notre Dame, he could have, I guess, when he would have had an association with Charlie Weiss. He would have played for Charlie Weiss for 3 or 4 years, and then after his NFL career had ended, he could have gone and been a GA for Charlie Weiss at Kansas, which would have been
be out of the profession.
Yes, exactly. And then shortly after that, he would be back in Columbus selling insurance, like a lot of the former football players end up doing, or they're in mortgaging or whatever. There's going to be some jobs, or actually, he would have had to been in somewhere in South Bend. I'm sure there's plenty of jobs in Chicago for a guy in insurance or whatever. Instead, he went to Ohio State, and now he's making millions as Notre Dame's head coach. It's I feel bad for him.
If I'm not mistaken, most head coaches across America are in the same situation in which they are currently employed by a university that they should be lauding as being great places to attend and play football, but also they have an allegiance and certainly typically meet that allegiance and verbalize that allegiance to their former school, their alma mater. He's in the same position. As Kevin most notably said, you can do both. You can certainly talk about all the great things available to everyone at Notre Dame to play football and go to school, and not diss your alma mater who set you up for a head coaching position at Notre Dame at the age of 35. And the one thing that wasn't stated here, although I guess Kevin hit on the records, was and this has nothing to do with where he's landed and progressed through his career, but I find it laughable that Notre Dame was 2 games over 500 for 3 years, that he was at Ohio State going to 3 BCS bowl games, 3 Big Ten championships, and 2 national championship games. So there was no comparison on the field between the two.
Kind of says it all.
The Jacksonville Jaguars made an announcement overnight. And I was just about to go to bed, and I'm surfing around, and I'm seeing comments about Urban Meyer, and then, bam, I go to the source, and there it is.
Yeah,
and
pretty crazy stuff. Embarrassing episode for the Jaguars and Urban Meyer. And, I've been very much an apologist for Urban Meyer on Twitter and taking people on and basically complained that, ESPN, for lack of a better term, because they've kind of been one of the ones banging the drum, maybe Yahoo to a point, I don't know, whoever covers the NFL closely from a 5 mile up in the air view, have been very active really from the day he was hired in writing hit pieces against him and saying, negative things about him and how things are going. And quoting players, and my feeling was, none of these guys, let's think the Browns were 0-16 5 or 6 years ago. Are any of those guys still on the Browns last year when they win a playoff game? Maybe 5, 6, 8, maybe. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. But my feeling is when the Jaguars are good again, none of the players who are there now are going to be there. And it was Urban Meyer's job to go in there and shake things up and identify who's going to be part of the solution, who's going to be part of the problem, and get rid of the problem people and upgrade. That's what the Browns did. Every year they upgraded 6 or 7 spots, and they went, 3 wins, 7 wins. And then last year beat the Steelers in the playoffs, just something unheard of. So for the Browns, if you followed their history since they came back in 2000 or whatever year it was. So, he had a very difficult job. And yet, as I logged on to ESPN this morning and I opened their story, and they had a chronology of everything that had gone wrong since January 14th when he was hired, beginning with hiring the Iowa guy who, treated his players bad and had the racial epithets, the episode with the Cincinnati. I didn't find not flying back with the team a problem. I found the issue in the bar was the problem to me, because family, if there's time off for these guys, they can go their separate ways. It's professional football. This isn't seventh grade basketball where we all ride the bus home together. I would think there's other instances where a coach is not flown back on a team plane, but there were so many things that just accumulated that finally Shad Khan, who has been the dutiful wife and stood behind this guy, from day one, finally just said enough is enough. And, I feel bad for all the people who relocated and moved to Texas, or moved to Florida rather, to work with him. I got Texas in my mind because Fernando Lovo, who was here at Ohio State for a while, went down there to work for him, and he bugged out before the first season was done. So, yeah, I don't know. It just a terrible episode, humbling, embarrassing blip on his coaching career. People forget Lou Holtz tried to coach the New York Jets for 1 year and it didn't work out. He came back and won national championships later on in his career at Notre Dame. So, is that what's going to happen? Is he done with coaching forever? Can he segue back in at Fox? Because big game Bob Stoops really doesn't bring a whole lot to the table there on Fox. So maybe he just moves right back in there between Leinart and Quinn, and they go on with it.
Steve, you say it'll be a humbling experience. I wonder if it will be.
Yeah,
it's not a very humble guy.
So arrogant and so aloof. I think he's aloof more than he's arrogant.
Yeah.
I just think he doesn't recognize what he doesn't recognize. If you're just not somebody who can do anything for him, he just has very little to no use for you. And this is the guy that wrote the Above the Line book and all this other hoo-ha, him and Tim Kite with this ERO stuff. And, it was say one thing and do an absolute different. So that was kind of my feeling on that.
I remember when Urban Meyer was hired and we had the press conference, and a few of us hung out afterwards. We're just chatting with the OSU SID, and then he introduced us to Urban, and as he and Shelley were walking out, and I know Kevin was there as well, I think. And so we're saying where we're from, and I was from an independent side at the time, and he's like looking around. He's like, which one of you is from Rivals? Like, he wants to know the recruiting people, because that's where the lifeblood is for Urban, and that's, independent site, blah. I want to know who the recruiting service guy is. And it is, I never got the feeling that, if you couldn't really do anything for him, he didn't really have much for you. And that's where all of this circle of closeness, or whatever, circle of trust comes from. But that timeline that I saw on ESPN this morning was fun. Not funny, but some of it was funny, because it starts off with the Chris Doyle hire. And then the next egregious thing is signing Tim Tebow to see if he can make the team. And then it goes on to something else. And it's like, I just think there's such a fervor from it's so much of Urban Meyer is clickbait, and it works, and it moves the needle. And so he is, the microscope is on him, and it's partly, I guess, his fault for not recognizing that and not changing what he does because of that. But the kicking the kicker, tell me how hard he kicked him. Tell me, was it playful? Tell me what, whatever. And also, who among us hasn't wanted
to kick a kicker?
To kick a kicker. I mean, it's not like he's kicking a football player. He's kicking a kicker. But I agree with being fired. It's just it wasn't going to work. Nobody was going to allow it to work, including Urban Meyer.
Yeah, he went into a nearly impossible situation, poured gasoline all over it, and then lit it on fire. And that's my way of saying that he was not set up in a situation to have great success, but he was his own worst enemy in a lot of ways and a lot of decisions, and just made it, that's something that he could have probably written out 2-3 years, but we get through whatever it is, 12 games, and now he's out. And Certainly, I don't know if his sense of legacy is going to allow him to go out on that note. He may have to sit there and spend a couple years off in the periphery to rehabilitate his image or whatever. But I wouldn't expect this to be his last foray, just because he doesn't want to have that as the stain on the career resume. But it's certainly, you do feel bad, as was mentioned. I mean, a lot of people uprooted to move to be part of this. Oh, this is going to work, and now there are a lot of people that are playing out the string who will be there through the end of the season, and then will be scattered in the wind. But the good thing is, I think most NFL types, they get themselves into that cycle, and they just keep turning up elsewhere or whatever. But I did not stay up in time for the news, and I got a text message about 6 this morning from somebody on our staff just saying Urban Meyer ? And I started looking. I was like, oh, I guess I missed something last night. So there you go.
Guys, I'm going to head over to the interviews that are getting started here shortly over at Ohio State. But if anybody's got any good tips for the weekend or the bowl season, please let me know. I'm going to Las Vegas, and I intend to put money down on every game, college, pro, etc. And, I figure if you put down money on 20 games, maybe you'll hit 8 or 9 of them. I think that's a good ratio. So, yeah, let me know if you see anything out there.
8 or 9, Steve. We can do better.
If you hit them all on a parlay, you'll be doing well. You got to put them all. You got to pick your winners and bunch them together.
Yep, that's how you do it.
Appreciate it, Steve.
Take care, guys.
Have a safe flight. All right. Yeah. I just threw out the question online. Do you hire this man? And of course, like you guys said, I think there's got to be some type of reset. There's got to be some time away to let some things be just not forgotten. They're not going to be forgotten, but kind of separate from the recent issues and all the baggage and everything else. But my goodness, I can't think of another example. I was met with the Bobby Petrinos of the world, but no, we're talking about a guy we can run through all the baggage and the Jacksonville situation. There is nothing positive to take from that. It's all missteps and mistakes and just nothing positive. Some other things could be either criticized or defended off the field at Florida and Zach Smith at Ohio State, but best winning percentage of all time in modern college football. Don't throw me Bobby Petrino, because there's no comparison between their resume. They're in completely different universes when it comes to coaching resume and background and success. So this is just a completely different. Does said school want to just say, hey, this guy's a winner, we're going to take him on? And will Urban Meyer be the Urban Meyer of old? I think at some point, somebody, if they've made too many missteps that they can't recapture and maintain that credibility regardless of what their record is.
Well, the Urban Meyer of old it's old, really. And now he can't walk into a school and be like, I'm Urban Meyer, because all the people now, it's like, well, I know you from Jacksonville. I know you. I don't watch college pregame shows, so I don't know you from that. I know you from Jacksonville. And I'm sorry, I was 13 years old when you were coaching at Ohio State. I wasn't really watching you then. And so and you look at his offense now, and Ryan Day had to bring it into present day.
Yeah.
And so I thought Urban Meyer would have to change a little bit for this to work. I still think he has to change maybe even more now in college, given everything that is going on. He should just, if he wants to coach, go coach high school. Be the purest form of it, and don't have to deal with NIL, don't have to deal with the transfer portal, don't have to deal with all of this stuff that a lot of guys leave college because of. And I saw somebody saying, I think it was Rod Farva talking about Ohio State needs to go get Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel wants nothing to do with college football. He didn't like recruiting when he was here before. He does not want to have anything to do with recruiting, with not just recruiting high school kids, then recruiting your own kids once you've landed them, and then recruiting other teams' players out of the portal. It's all recruiting now, and he hated it. So don't expect him to be at Ohio State or in the college game. Why would he? He's very successful doing what he's doing. And that's I'm rambling, but Kevin, if you have something to say, please do.
Well,
so.
I was going to say college football's changed even in the last couple of years. I mean, you can't just sit there and bring somebody in and say, okay, listen here, you're at the bottom of the totem pole. Carry those pads in or whatever. You've got to recruit these guys every step of the way until the minute that they're out the door, either with a degree in hand, with an early NFL declaration, or they're going to the portal. You can't. It's just different. And if you don't like that aspect of the package, you're not going to do well with it. So, I mean, the game is changing how everything is set up. So I agree with what Tony says there, but yeah, don't think that high school is the purest form of it either. I mean, maybe you don't have that there, but you still have, Bob's Discount Autos that's probably still slipping some money to somebody or whatever. There's still all sorts of stuff at every level of it. So I don't know what the purest level is. I just think sure. No, then you're having to deal with the dad who's the coach who wants to make sure that his son is all-time quarterback because of the glory of that. Yeah. So
the purest form is the EA Sports video game.
That's exactly where I was going. That's exactly where I was going. Read a rumor yesterday that they're talking about using the Madden game engine for the NC2A, which is horrible news. I don't like the Madden game engine. There was always a difference between Madden and the NC2A versions, and it was a much more fluid, quicker game with the NC2A version. So, hopefully they figure it out. We all talk, well, they don't have a single line of code written. Be that as it may, they've got a year plus to be able to get it done. Start writing. If they can sit there and turn out a Call of Duty game every year, they can turn out a some sort of Star Wars game every year, you can get this thing going.
We're only a day removed from National Signing Day, but we've got months and months and months till spring practice to pick off player profiles and highlight these guys and so forth. And, of course, next week we can clean up some additional signees as Kevin ran down some guys that are in the mix over the next few days as players are able to sign through Friday. Let's pick off a couple super chats here. We appreciate Yakov. 22 schools can set up NIL. NCAA is a non-entity. We get your point, but that's not technically correct, but we get your point.
Do you want to be the one who tests the waters? And nobody turns in Ohio State like Ohio State. So there's no program out there that I trust less to be able to get away with skirting the rules than Ohio State and their belief of self-reporting. When everybody else's record against the NC2A is undefeated, when they sit there and say, go ahead, try and figure something out. Ohio State on the other side, and it's self-reporting, that hasn't worked for me.
Yeah, they self-report like other people use Instagram. Like they let everybody know everything. This is what I'm doing. We have actually texted 2 players that we shouldn't have, and we've let the NCAA know. And I've seen compliance names being bandied about here on the message board on Twitter saying this guy's the enemy, that guy's the enemy. Like they're just trying to keep Ohio State out of NCAA trouble. They're trying to stay on the up and up. This is something that Ohio State fans used to value. And now that paying players is allowed, they somehow want to start cheating. You don't need to cheat anymore. You just need alums and fans to set up charities, set up whatever, pay players to endorse your house. I mean, you can do anything. You just have to do it, and it's not going to be cheap.
Yeah, and with the horrific results of a number 4 recruiting class, they've come to that result that this needs to be done immediately.
Like, do you think it is the people who have given Quinn Ewers money, have they gotten their return on their investment at all?
I still haven't bought Holy Kombucha, but I don't think Holy Kombucha sounds very appetizing. I've tried kombucha once, and
You can't get it in Ohio.
At Jungle Gyms and down in the Cincinnati area, and I was like, I don't need to do this again. I don't care if it's holy or not holy. It was holy gross is what it was. I didn't like it.
But I mean, has anybody gone and bought a car because that's where Quinn Ewers was given his car? Or, I still go back to Nick Saban talking about how Bryce Young had 7-figure deals or whatever. Nobody has ever said, I don't think, where Bryce Young is, what's he endorsing? And that seems like, if you're endorsing something, don't keep it a secret. That's not how you endorse it. That's not how you sell your name, image, and likeness. So I think a lot of this is just, it's new, so there's panic about it. But also, Barstool has been denying the entire 1.5 million that's out there, and it just spirals out of control. And you got half truths, and half truths are also, we have to remember, half lies, and there's a lot of that going on right now.
Buyers Vacation Rentals. Pay the players or lose the players, plain and simple. Don't be like Blockbuster Video, who couldn't change with the times and went bankrupt.
Can I address this real quick, Kevin, and then I'll let you go?
Yeah.
It's not pay the players, it's play the players, as we saw with Quinn Ewers. He was paid. He left. If you don't play these guys, they will leave. I don't care if Texas has 16 offensive linemen making $50,000 a year. If they're not playing, they're going to leave. They'll be back in the portal. You can go recruit them again. Good job landing a whole bunch of talent, but now you've got it. What are you going to do with it? You can't play them all.
Once you give Eric Dickerson the car, he has the car. I mean, it's that situation, and I think we could see a mercenary class in college football where it's like, okay, well, I'm going to go here and get my money this year. I think we know who I'm kind of talking about at that point, but I think we could see more of it. And now I'm going to go somewhere else the next year, especially if I'm not being played, as Tony said. So I don't think it's just as simple as just opening up a blank checkbook and just writing checks and saying, well, here we go. I mean, that doesn't mean anything. There are programs out there that certainly have weaponized NIL, and it'll be an interesting case study to see what it is that they're able to do with this. Because at the end of the day, I don't think anybody's going to make the type of money out of NIL that they were making the league. And it's just going to be a matter of which players are going to have the wherewithal to say, all right, maybe I make a little less money and I go somewhere and I get developed and I sign a second NFL contract or even a third NFL contract and I make generational wealth versus, I mean, I'm not turning down $1.5 million. I mean, Mark pays me 1.2 to be on the show, but with your fine super chats. But the thing is like, I could get this money now, regardless of how I perform. And not everybody makes it to the next level. I mean, we see all these NC2A athletes who end up working at Enterprise according to the commercials. But I think that if you're a top athlete who's kind of the surefire NFL caliber type of guy, you need to kind of look at the entire situation, because making $600,000, $700,000 even a year at 4 years, all right, you've got 2.5, 2.8 million in the bank or whatever. Sign that NFL contract. Your signing bonus dwarfs that if you're a top pick. So I don't know. I just don't think it's as simple as saying just pay dudes or whatever. There still has to be something in there. And while I have zero faith that the NC2A is going to be able to get its arms around NIL at this point without some sort of federal type legislation in terms of what NIL is, which I don't really want the government getting into college sports. I want the government to try to run this damn country. I don't know. I just think that that's not the way I view it, is just saying pay them or pay them or be left behind. I mean, yes, you do need to figure out ways that that's going to work out, but you also need to at least stay within some sort of, you have to stay within the painted lines to a certain extent, because I think there are going to be some programs that are going to be so blatant and so bad with this situation that the NC2A is just going to fall within, it's going to fall into the bodies. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know how to say it.
I do think you see a segment of fans, and I'll just talk about Buckeye fans now. They want their team to be tougher. They're not tough enough. They're soft. They're this, they're that. Do you want a tough team, or do you want a team that just shows up for money? And is a team that shows up for money, is that tough? Is that, or is that just a people showing up for a payday? How does that make your culture better? How does that make your team stronger? It makes it more talented. Ohio State has plenty of talent. What does it? It didn't get them to the playoffs. They're more talented than Michigan. What did that do? I don't think just mercenaries are not the answer in terms of if the issue is toughness, paying players doesn't fix that. That just brings in other players that then you have to hope that you can get them to be as tough as you want them to be, even though it's I think players are plenty tough, but I don't think one fixes the other. If you consider that Ohio State is soft, if this is your thought process, I don't know how paying players fixes that.
I want to jump in with a point too. Everybody was so concerned about once NIL was there, how the SEC, how these programs in the Deep South were going to be the ones to weaponize it. I said even from day one, once that started, it's not those programs. Look at the state of Texas. Look at the booster culture at A&M. Look at the booster culture at Texas. Those are the ones with some of that oil money and things there. Those are the ones that I felt that were going to be the ones that were going to be front and center. And I'm not going to sit there and say that I've completely been proven right at this point, but I feel as if I've been proven right here 1 year into the cycle.
Yeah, oil money is a lot bigger than shrimp boat money.
Unless you put it all into Apple or whatever Forrest did. I mean, I'm just going to stop before I get on some sort of downhill run.
Razmataz will pick us up. Razmataz, thank you so much for the super chat. Apparently, Steve is the one working hard for the rest of us.
Well, he jumped in with another one too with your name, but Tony and I, we're just kind of hanging out. We're just riding your guys' coattails.
Well, to be fair, we didn't have to go anywhere to do the show. We're both at home. Mark is in his studio. Steve did go somewhere, so
Steve already was somewhere.
That must be the difference.
Yeah, Steve was already somewhere. He didn't go to a separate location to go do it.
Razmataz, thank you so much for that. We appreciate it. And okay, here we go. Buyers. Mark, next time I call in, I want to know why my super chats are purposefully getting skipped.
Because we don't shut up and let them get to them.
Yes, I apologize for purposefully skipping the last one that I read and it was responded to. Okay, buyers, stop making stupid, inaccurate statements, because if anybody watches me on here, I'm not dodging anything. I'm not dodging anyone. I take call-in shows like 3 times a week, so anybody can call and debate or argue anything with me, first and foremost. Secondly, there have been maybe all of 2, definitely 1 super chats in the history of this show and other shows that I do out of all your various contributions, which I appreciate beyond what I can express, that I have not read because there was some sort of profanity it was profanity laced. That was the only exception I've ever taken. People have taken shots at me and put super chats on them, and I'll read them out loud. So buyers, I have probably missed probably we will say 0.1% of all the super chats that have ever come into this channel. So that was not purposeful. If I ever missed a super chat from you, if you've watched, and I know you have, you should know that. I appreciate them and read them. All right, buyers, never mind. Okay. They're sometimes not answered and read in a timely manner according to your parameters. That must be it. Razmataz, there it is. I'm working hard too. Thank you so much, Razmataz. We appreciate you and your contributions. Thank you so much for that, because these 2 guys, along with Steve, they make it work. They make it happen here each and every week. and they are working football, basketball. They've got their personal lives. They've got all sorts of stuff going on. So we hope you appreciate it. And thank you so much for all the people that contributed. And if you did not contribute, we appreciate you as well. Just hit the like button, share the videos, just do other things that help us build the channel and this show in particular. Looking for a sponsor as well. So if you can benefit us in that way or have a connection, just hit me up at MarkRogersTV@gmail. Before we sign off, Kevin, just want to make sure that all I can do for these guys, in addition to your contributions that come in, is make sure that their platforms are highlighted. So, Kevin, want to make sure that everyone knows where to find you.
Yeah, once again, I'm at BuckeyeScoop.com. You can find me at Twitter at Kevin_Noon. And, of course, you can find my my own podcast, the Big Me Kickoff, over on the Buckeye Scoop channel, or just search for Big Me Kickoff. I'm on YouTube, Spreaker, all of those good services. Tony knows more about where the stuff goes. I just kind of walked into all of that. So I'll defer to Tony because he can tell us where we are.
Well, you can find Kevin's Big Me Kickoff wherever podcasts are sold. Any platform, it'll hit. Whatever you use, you can find it there. You can also find my podcast, the Buckeye Weekly Podcast, there as well. Find me on Twitter at Tony Gerdeman, or also at BuckeyeScoop.com. Thank you, Mark.
Guys, thank you so much for being here. You guys know that. Everybody have a great week. We will catch you back here most likely next Wednesday. That's one reason you subscribe. Hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live, because sometimes we need to change up on the times. But most of the time, it's Wednesday, 1:30 Eastern time. Tony, Kevin, appreciate it. You guys have a great week.
Yeah, thanks. You too.